You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
You're listening to Phantom Tracks. Flip through the galaxy of literature. Welcome to Canon Fodder.
You're listening to Canon Fodder and a very special episode as I take the opportunity to sit down with Matt Ferguson. Matt is the Sheffield-based artist behind the Phantom Menace 25th anniversary poster. We chat about his Star Wars fandom all the way through to his work, including this current Phantom Menace piece. So here's myself and Matt Ferguson chatting all about his career on a special episode of Canon Fodder.
So you've done a lot of artwork recently for posters and for movies that are out and are coming in the Star Wars galaxy. But for you yourself specifically, where did Star Wars start for you?
That would be when I was extremely young. So 1984, 1985, maybe a little bit later, I saw Return of the Jedi. And that's like a vivid childhood memory. That's the first Star Wars I saw, Jabba's Palace. I remember being very, very scared of the space slug, and it just sort of imprinted onto me. And then I would watch them whenever I could, because obviously back then we didn't have video. My family didn't get video until the 90s. Just whenever it was on TV or books, I remember being obsessed with the novelization of It's Now a New Hope of Star Wars, where with the pictures in the middle, and there was a picture of a stormtrooper on a dewback, and I remember just looking at it, it's like, that man's on a dinosaur and he's like in space, and it's just like so different when you're a kid. I was obsessed. And then after that, obviously, the big punch in was with the special editions when they got released, because I got to go see it at the cinema.
And what was it that grabbed you as a kid? Was it the fact that it was so cool? Was it the fact that it was so scary? What was it that hooked you as a kid?
Probably the creatures, the just the wild and different sort of aliens, especially like in Return of the Jedi. There's so many different strange critters and stuff, and I just really like the designs of all of those. So the creature design was what hooked me, I think.
There's a lot of people, obviously Star Wars spans a lot of different age groups, even from the original trilogy era. I came in on the original film and you came in on Jedi. Do you think, obviously it's the third chapter, so you're kind of playing, to a degree, you're playing catch up when you watch Jedi first. And I know I saw Star Wars and saw Empire once at the cinema, then Jedi came out, and then I had a pirate copy of Jedi. But Star Wars had been on television, so I kept watching Star Wars and Jedi, and Empire kind of came later in a way. So your experience is all sort of mixed up as a kid. Do you think you have a different perspective on Star Wars if the first thing you see is Return of the Jedi with that crazy menagerie of creatures? Do you think it gives you a different kind of perspective on Star Wars from the very beginning?
I don't know for sure, because all I know is I loved it like instantaneously, and it scared me.
Yeah.
So maybe like the first Star Wars, if I'd have seen like A New Hope first, I might have had a different reaction, because that's not as weird and wonderful, and it's not got like as much intensity in it. It's more of for a younger audience in a way. I suppose it does depend where your entry point is, because there's been so many different versions of Star Wars, never mind the films or the TV shows, but like comic books and novels and action figures, because I had the action figures. I've got two older brothers, so I inherited a lot of their Star Wars figures, and I used to just play with them with Transformers and other things. And it's just like, you like the way they look. So it's the design of it, I think. It's so instantaneously obvious who the bad guys are and who the good guys are. So as a kid, it's very easy to sort of get into, because it's sort of right there in pretty much any Star Wars movie. They're very easy to follow.
You mentioned design. Obviously, you're an artist with a keen eye for design. So when did art come into your life as a thing that you thought, I'm actually quite good at this? And then when did Star Wars and your art start to collide and become a thing?
So I remember as a kid at school when Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles hit quite big. So I would have been about 7. And I remember teaching myself how to draw the turtles so that I could then show other kids in class how to draw turtles. And I was obsessive about that. My parents have told a story about how when we were on holiday in Scotland, when I was very young, maybe 5 or 6, I can vaguely remember it, but not really. They sort of went to this artist's house, and he was there drawing landscapes and stuff. And then I was like, oh, I want to do that. I'll draw a landscape. And the artist guy apparently was like, oh, that's really good. Your kid's got some talent. So then they just bought me loads of paper and pencils, and I used to spend holidays cooped up drawing. I was quite obsessively into drawing from a very early age. So then obviously if you're obsessively into that and you're obsessively into Star Wars, you're going to want to teach yourself how to draw Boba Fett pretty early on. I used to do that in school a lot in art class. I would just draw Star Wars or comic book characters and stuff instead of like the sort of projects that we were supposed to be doing. And then like I didn't do any art for a while, and then it came back in my 20s.
Why did it fade away? Was it just one of those things where you kind of drifted out of it for a bit and then got the enthusiasm back, or?
Well, you know, when you're sort of 17 or 18, I did a lot of stuff with video games for fun. And I almost got a job when I was 17 for a video games company. And I got quite scared because it was quite like real and serious. And I was still at school. So I thought, no, I'm going to finish my A levels and not do that. And then that kind of put me on a different track for a bit. And I did a film degree. So I did a film degree, which I didn't finish. I failed. You know, and you know, you're in your early 20s at that point, was living my life. There's these different things that go in, I suppose. So like there's the love of films from the film degree. I worked in a comic book shop and read a lot of comics, things from my youth, like Transformers and Star Wars. And then it's like a whole melting point. And then I sort of made a picture for my now wife of Samurai Jack, a cartoon in the early noughties that we were into. Her sister was like, "That's amazing, you drew that." And I was like, well, I didn't draw it so much as I made it on the computer because I was doing a lot of digital. And she was like, oh, you should do this as a career. And I was like, well, I thought about it in the past and then I never really did anything. And that was around 2009. And then I just tried to do it almost by mistake, just made an Avengers picture. And that sort of got picked up by the studio. And then I haven't looked back since.
This is Steve Bloom, voice of Zeborelios, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks. Caravast. May the force be with you.
When did you realise then that that was the path for you? Because like you say, you've dabbled at different things. From the way you're describing it, it kind of all feels like it fits together. But when did you kind of know that, actually, I could really make a go of this? Yeah,
it all sort of fed in because all my interests and stuff kind of have a similar vein as you would say traditionally nerdy, but it's not nerdy. It's just like science fiction, fantasy, comic books. And it sort of all just fed in. And then it was when that Avengers thing got picked up, it was like, oh, so this is real then. I could potentially do this. So then I got obsessive and I just sort of really knuckled down. And I can remember back then after work, working really late after work on artwork and stuff to try and make a go of it. I saved up a bunch of money and I didn't have that much money and I quit my day job. It was like, I had a few months worth of sort of rent in the bank. But I had my wife as well. She was my wife by that point and she was helping support me. But then amazingly, literally 2 weeks after I quit my job, I got Guardians of the Galaxy. The studio hired me to do a bunch of work for Guardians of the Galaxy. And it was just like, yes, I did it. I did the right thing.
And when you say work for the studio, what sort of work is that? Is that posters that you pick up in the lobby at the Odeon kind of stuff? What sort of work?
Yeah, so giveaway posters, digital posters, just stuff for online, just ideas, whatever they want me to do really is where that goes. And it's usually a project by project basis. So it's not like I work for them like as a full-time job. I'm freelance and they come to me and say, do you want to do this? And I 9 times out of 10 go, oh, yeah, because I love this stuff.
What's your process? There was a wonderful piece on StarWars.com where it kind of broke down with some of the thumbnails and the pre-viz, if you like, sort of ideas of how you would put that Phantom poster together. How do you break it down? How do you work it out? What's the route towards noodling it down on a bit of paper to that finished piece being delivered?
So I'll go with the Empire Strikes Back one because that was kind of like a real changing point in my recent career where I tried a few different things, but I was stuck on the Empire Strikes Back because they said 40th anniversary of Empire Strikes Back. We want you to do the artwork. So my first thought is, that's incredible. Just so excited. I remember just jumping around. Then I couldn't think up of anything because you look at the Empire Strikes Back poster, the Gone with the Wind one, the Roger Castell original, just so like iconic. And it's not just because the films are iconic. I think that the artwork is genuinely really good artwork. So then it's like, how can I approach doing that? Because it's already been done how I would envision perfectly. And then the Drew Struzan special edition one's just ridiculous. It's just so good. So what I decided to do, maybe my wife, again, gave me some advice, was watch the movie. So we sat down and watched the movie and I had a little A5 notebook. And then anything that I thought was interesting just to look at, I was like, oh, yeah. So I did these thumbnails. And I had done thumbnails before, but this is the first time I did that sort of process of doing lots of thumbnails while I'm watching the film or listening to music from the film or anything like that. It was the carbon chamber coming down. It's such a stark black and white image with the light inside and the dark outside, it just struck me that I could do space outside the carbon chamber and have it be like a graphic element, which is then fed into the other Star Wars posters where I want that kind of contrast. But then that made me think maybe I can get away with less. I don't have to have the actors on it so much as it could just be telling the simple story of there's the Empire, because Vader represents the Empire. So as soon as I had that idea, it was just getting the work done. And amazingly, the people at Lucasfilm and Disney were just like, yep, go for it.
When you pitch an idea, when you break down an idea, and obviously you got immersed in the process of finding something unique, because like you say, Empire of all films, there's so many vivid and beautiful images in that film that you could pick from, and you've landed on one, and you've gone to Lucasfilm. Was there a little part of you thinking, they're going to say no, they're going to go, can you focus on Yoda, can you focus on whatever? Were you surprised that they took to that piece so quickly?
I wouldn't say surprised, as just sort of happy and relieved that they sort of agreed with me and gave me the freedom to be really creative on that one. And then that's fed into other stuff since, where it's like a real confidence boost. So I feel like I can not second guess myself, because I spend so much time second guessing myself and thinking what I've done is rubbish. But I can't say that I like the Empire Strikes Back poster that I did, because I don't really like anything that I've done once I've done it. But I think I really like the concept on that one, and I think I managed to come up with something different, a little bit different maybe from a lot of stuff that's been done before, even though it's still Star Wars iconography and stuff. But yeah, they were just like, go for it. And it's just so sort of gratifying to have that.
It must have been pleasing then for you that there's Empire that comes out during the pandemic and doesn't get the flowers it should have got for its 40th anniversary because we were all busy thinking of other things. And then Jedi comes along and that does get the notice that it should have got. Was it pleasing that that opportunity came along as well, that you had the chance to do more?
Oh, I was so excited because I was like, oh, yes, I can do more. Like the initial concept that I had wasn't that, actually. It was a bit different. But the first thing you think is, oh, am I going to get to do all 9? I want to do all 9.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's brilliant. And you do end up saying that to them, just next time there's an anniversary, please think of me. Because I went to Celebration for that and they gave us passes and everything. And so we went into the big room where they had the panel.
The Celebration stage, yeah.
And it was thousands of people in there. It was ridiculous. It was all with lightsabers and stuff. It was amazing. And then they announced it and put it on the big screen and everybody was really excited. And then they said, go get your free poster from wherever down the hall. And they were all streaming out to try and get the posters. So I was just like, wow, that was so cool. It was amazing.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video and social media feeds, bookmark fanthatracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
And what did you make of Celebration? Because obviously, I mean, you're a fan, so you're aware of all these things anyway, but it's different when you're involved. It's different when you're part of the whole. And then your poster's just thrown up on the wall. I bet you felt like getting your Sharpie out, didn't you?
Well, I did end up doing that. Not on purpose, but I wasn't due to do any signings or anything. But I was like, let's go and see if there's any posters left. We'll go and get a couple. And then, like, somebody recognized me or somehow, I can't remember how it happened. So they were like, can you sign it? And I was like, yeah, I'll sign it. And then somebody else was like, hey, he's signing. So then all of a sudden, there's a bunch of people like getting me to sign it, and we're just like in like a cloakroom sort of situation. I'm not like the most people friendly person in terms of big crowds. Yeah, I like to be inside. I'm a reclusive artist, so it was extremely busy. But I like doing these conventions and things because it's so nice to see like the response. So it's kind of like so worth it. And then obviously, like when you're behind the curtain and you get a pass and you can sort of get around easily, it's really cool as well. It was a different vibe at Celebration to pretty much any other convention I've ever been to. So I've done quite a few conventions because it really was like the name Celebration. Everybody was just so like hyped up for Star Wars and so specific that it was just brilliant because there's no sort of animosity or anything. It was great. Yeah, it was a really nice vibe in there, I thought.
Did you get to see much of the show? You get a chance to travel around and see different things?
Oh, yeah. Went all around, went backstage, went to see some of the stalls, and there was like an artist alley situation with some artists and stuff, and so I went to speak to some artists and I bought some toys. Obviously I was going to buy some toys, so yeah, it was awesome. I really did like that day.
you've done Empire, you've done Jedi, you missed Star Wars, but there's another anniversary for Star Wars coming up in, 3 years' time. So there's always
Hopefully.
an opportunity there. And then Phantom, they announced that they're going to make a big fuss of Phantom, which of course they should. And the opportunity comes along again. So arguably, you would say, especially right now with the anniversary only a couple of months away, it's very high profile and it comes to your door again. So again, how did you work up? How did you figure out? This piece seems more elaborate than anything else I've seen of yours in terms of design, in terms of framing. And of course, the characters and costumes and designs of Phantom are just beautiful anyway. And you've highlighted Darth Maul's eyes look amazing. You've honed in on those things. How did you kind of work up what you were going to do in the placement of these things?
As per usual, I kind of like went with my gut feeling. I watched the film, and the thing that sort of sticks out when I'm watching it now, but also like my memory of at the time, was how regal and classical feel to the design of the film. So you wouldn't say staged, but it's kind of got this sort of feel that's like very classical, like old cinema. And I guess that's what George Lucas was going for with it. And it really works because it's showing that sort of time period before it all gets blown up. But also, like, I can just remember the toys at the time in 1999. I got a Darth Maul one. I remember that with the little speed bike. But the sort of colouring was very warm and red and gold. So that was kind of like, I wanted to trigger my own memory of what it was like when the Phantom Menace was coming out with the poster. So that was kind of like my thinking with the colour palette. And then like the characters, it's trying a little bit to tell a bit of the story, sort of showing where it could go if you know the story. So obviously you've got a tiny little Anakin. He's so insignificant. He's just a little urchin that's working for Watto. And then the Jedi and Amidala are in between. And then the Phantom Menace is Darth Maul. And like, obviously people know that the Phantom Menace is Palpatine. But in that movie, the characters don't know that. They just think Darth Maul's the baddie until Yoda's like, they always come in twos. There's another one hanging around somewhere. So for me, I was like, well, what's the story of the film? And for the characters, they're trying to protect that element. And Amidala's at the centre because it's all about Naboo and what they're trying to do with the blockade and all that business. That's my sort of mental thinking, is it's laying the story down in simple character placement, if that makes any sense.
It makes all the sense because with Star Wars in general, as time moves on, new things come in and it gives you the chance to sort of reassess what you've seen in the past. With a slot, every time a new little wrinkle is added, it adds another layer. When you first saw that film, I'm guessing you were sort of late teens when Phantom came out. So what was your initial impression? Because for me, I remember seeing it in the States and came out the cinema and turned to my friend and went, what the was that sort of thing? It didn't land with me at all the first time. Repeat viewings have made it one of my absolute favourites because I think it's just so cleverly layered and there's so much portent.
Yeah.
It's one of those kind of films. So how did you feel?
I remember convincing myself and trying to convince my brothers that we loved it and it was really good. But like the sort of stilted, no, well, not stilted, but the sort of the way the dialogue is, and it's very sort of cold and calculated, a lot of it.
There's a formality about it, isn't there?
Yeah, it's very formal and regal, and it's weird because there's elements in it that obviously it's like Jar Jar Binks is silly, but the kids love Jar Jar Binks because I saw it in a cinema again when they did the 3D release, and there was a little 6-year-old boy sat next to us, and he just loving Jar Jar Binks. So then that made me think, oh, Jar Jar Binks isn't that bad because that kid likes him.
Yeah,
I like Ewoks, and all the adults at the time didn't like Ewoks, but because I was a little kid, I just thought Ewoks were the best. It's like Star Wars is kind of like for everybody, and there's elements that you can take from the films that you like. So then when you rewatch it over time, you get the things that you like about it out of it more, because they are quite rewatchable movies. The interesting one about the Phantom Menace, I think, is the editing is quite intense and crazy, especially at the end, because there's all those different things happening. There's stuff happening on Naboo, and then there's the stuff happening in the palace, and then there's the stuff happening in space, and then there's the fight happening with Darth Maul, and it's all intercut, and you can follow it. Everybody loves the Duel of the Fates, at the end. But it's amazing as well, all the rest of the stuff that's cutting in and it still makes sense and you can follow it. It's just quite a complicated movie, really, in that regard, even though it's a quite simple story.
That's a really good point, actually. I don't think it gets the credit it deserves.
It's my favourite of the 3 prequels. I really like it. I like the sort of, it's got a tactile feel to it as well, because there's a lot more location work. And I've not got nothing against green screen or anything. I think that's fine. The palace and everything feels so great. And a lot of that's like on location. I just think it's aged really well. It looks great when you watch it now still. I think it looks really good.
I think it's interesting when you talk about these things and you're talking about it, not only as a fan, which you obviously are, but also as an artist, because you've got to kind of put your finger on certain things to highlight and pull forward. And without wanting to pitch too far in the future, and fingers crossed it comes across your path, let's say Attack of the Clones comes along and you have the opportunity to do something with that. So if you were breaking that, sitting here right now, cold question, if you were kind of breaking down Attack of the Clones, it is Spielberg, I think he compared it to the Maltese Falcon. It's kind of it's a detective story almost.
I would go Obi-Wan, definitely. I would want to zero in on Obi-Wan on that movie, and maybe something with Jango Fett and the rain and all that, because that's like my instant memory. But then also, obviously, there's the whole thing on Tatooine with Anakin and the Tusken Raiders, which is pivotal. So it's kind of like you got to think about the bigger story as well. So that movie is Obi-Wan Kenobi doing detective, but the bigger picture with Anakin is always what's kind of most important. So it's another tricky one.
It is. It's an impossible question because it's an embarrassment of riches, really, isn't it, with films like this?
Yeah, there's so many different visuals and wild things in them that you can do all sorts.
Hello, I'm Ahmed Best, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
So without giving anything away, are you a busy fella at the moment? Have you got other work on the go? How's it all going?
I'm very busy. Always busy. I've got a poster company and we're doing posters and stuff all the time. And then I'm working on posters for movies. I usually do about 2 at a time. I'm working on something for one of my favourite franchises, which is really cool. And that's not really giving too much away, but that's all I can say.
No, that's all good. That's very good. You say working on 2 at a time. How does that work? Do you work a bit on one, come back to another? How does that work? Yeah.
It's a way to I find like it's a way to, when you get tired of a picture because you're intensely working on a picture, you're going to end up getting tired and you lose sight of it. So then I'll just switch to another one. And then a day or 2 later, you come back to it and you go, oh yeah, what was I thinking? What did I do that for, idiot?
Do you walk away and come back and go, I could have done, I've just suddenly thought of a better idea, or I've just
yeah. It's the best advice really is to, if you're stuck, is just to stop, walk away, do something else.
Yeah.
So if I've got another bit of work on, do that for a bit, or even just go off and watch some Star Trek or something.
Yeah.
And then come back even like a week, give it a week or so. If you've got that, sometimes you don't when you're on a deadline. But I find that really helps. It's like, oh yeah, what was I thinking? You just can't see it anymore. You like lose sight of what you're doing because you're just in the nitty gritty of it all.
Phantom, they've announced, Disney have confirmed it is coming to the UK. It's coming on the big screen, which is great news because they only mentioned the States initially, but it is coming to the UK. Will you be seeing Phantom? And which cinema can I find you in the foyer with a nice gold Sharpie to get my poster signed?
I will be seeing it. There's nothing confirmed about any sort of signing situation. I'll be going anyway to see it. I live in Sheffield, so I'll be going to a local cinema in Sheffield.
Brilliant. And one final question before I let you go. You mentioned Celebration being in the UK last year. We haven't got one this year, but it's in Japan next year. So any hopes of getting over there for a bit of a mooch around Tokyo?
I hope so. It's the 10th anniversary of The Force Awakens, isn't it? And then there's an anniversary of Revenge.
It's the 20th of Revenge of the Sith, yeah.
So I hope so. I would like to because I've never been to Japan. I would love to go.
Well, fingers crossed we'll see you there, if not before. And thanks for being our guest. Really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this special edition of Canon Fodder. For more Star Wars podcast content, be sure to subscribe to Phantom Tracks Radio on your podcatcher of choice. Subscribe to all our social media at links.phantomtracks.com. Be sure to be checking out phantomtracks.com daily for all your latest Star Wars news. And you can also join us live on YouTube for Good Morning Tatooine every Sunday evening at youtube.com/PhanthaTracksTV.
Coming up next on Phantom Tracks Radio, it's Making Tracks.